Welcome, Lisa Karlin. We're so excited to have you back at IWU, even if it's virtual.
I'm happy to be here.
So thank you for doing this. I sent you some little things. I have a few other little questions. I think that how we'll do this is just you and I will kind of engage in conversation. We'll talk through some things. And we'll take, virtually about half the class or whatever doing that and try to cover different topics. And then we'll open it up to the students to start asking questions. And it's going to be pretty casual. You and I was student. They really haven't changed in nature since you were here. And so we're pretty lax about, there's not a big, we're not very formal. That's what I want to say, I guess.
And are you fully virtually learning right now? Like who's in Munsell, who's in Blackstock, who are you guys all on campus?
Yeah, go to like gallery view. Everybody, let's
I was gonna say.
So a lot of them are in Gates, which we didn't have when you were here, which is really fancy. It's better than, New York City apartment living. They have like granite countertops. But the thing is, so who are in the Gates? Because that's most of the upperclassmen.
Well, that sounds nice. Don't get used to that.
Yeah, that's right over there. Do you know where the parking lot is that like everybody would park to come over to like Ames or to Presser or to McPherson by the president's house? It's behind that. There's like two big nicer kind of apartment dorm for upperclassmen.
Nice.
And then who's in Blackstock? Because I know like Justine and Olivia are, because I could see from.
Yeah, I lived on the 3rd floor of Blackstock my sophomore year.
And who all lives in Blackstock? Didn't you all live in Blackstock?
Oh man, a bunch of us. John Taflin and Bill Porter and Phil Wackerfrost had one room together. And then myself and Sarah Jensen and Elizabeth Olsen and Brittany Murphy had a really big room, the big room on the 3rd floor.
Yeah, so it's still the arts house. It's still primarily theater majors. That's all hasn't changed.
Oh, that's so great. I'm so glad to see you guys. I wish I was really there.
More often now, instead of them living in houses, in scary houses around Miller Park, or around, not Miller Park, around that park, now a lot of them choose to live in the Gates. Still enough houses to have off-campus parties.
I would take the Gates and granite countertops over like the Happiness Hotel or some of the terrible.
We still have people in Happiness. They're not in this class, but Happiness is still a theater house.
Great.
So that being said, we aren't all virtual. This class so far has been virtual. But like it's a hybrid. Most dance classes are happening, most acting classes are happening, workshops happening in person. All my classes for me personally were in person last semester, but this one, it's just very hard for me to do an audition where I can't see their face.
Well, yeah.
Our mask
and like auditions now are becoming virtual anyways, so it's a really new skill to hone. I wish that we had learned that in college, but like I'm so old. We didn't even have like smartphones yet. It's like Facebook came out when I graduated, so that's how old I am.
When I started here, I did not have a smartphone. I didn't have, so I was like, and I don't think I've been here that long, and then I realized it's almost 15 years. So.
But the ease of virtual auditions, even pre-pandemic, has become a thing. So I'm really glad you guys are learning that. I'm still learning that on the fly myself. Well, I'm sure we'll get to that.
Yeah, and I will say that's also how rep classes ended up now. It's there's 47 of us together. We have to be virtual because there's just too many people to be in the chapel.
Absolutely.
So that's also all about self-taping. So they're getting a lot of self-tape.
That is so great. I wish I had that kind of practice. Like I'll practice now in the pandemic. I've practiced self-taping just when I'm bored. And I have a setup that I invested in. But yeah, that's great. You guys are learning that now.
Awesome. Okay, Lisa, talk to them about, so I haven't told them a lot. I sent them your website. I told them to kind of do some research on you for their own questions. But let's talk a little bit about, let's start with Wesleyan, your Wesleyan experience. I mean, I know when you graduated, I know what your degree's in. I know all the shows that you did when you were here, even though you were pre-me, just a little bit. And, but they don't. So let's talk about your experiences, highs, lows. Let's talk about your Wesleyan experience. And then let's talk about a little bit about how that prepared or didn't prepare you, which is fine that it didn't. So we can correct those, right?
Yeah.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah, lots to talk about. Well, I graduated Illinois Wesleyan in 2005 with the BFA in musical theater. I was going for that women's studies minor, but senior year things got truncated with my schedule and I was like just shy of that credit, so I dropped it, if I'm being honest. But women's studies classes were fascinating as well. That's one of the things I really liked about Wesleyan and why I chose to go there was because I felt like it was a well-rounded education, as great as a conservatory atmosphere may be. I like school. I always liked learning and reading, and I felt like I got a well-rounded education as an artist, as well as just like a human being and a person with a brain and a scholar and whatever you want to call yourself, as just like outside of artistry. And frankly, anything that you learn, most of my Jeopardy knowledge is from being an artist, that sort of thing that you research. And so I like researching things that are not necessarily directly into like, you know, musicals. So I loved that Wesleyan gave this really well-rounded, challenging education. The shows I did, the very first show I did was in the Phoenix my freshman year, because I don't know, are you guys still not doing main stage shows freshman year? I think that's great, like learn the other side of things. I love that we, again, to speak to IWU's well-roundedness in just in the curriculum. I love that that's an option, but Phoenix shows, right? And so my freshman year, I actually did, myself and a bunch of ladies did the Vagina Monologues. That was pretty new back then. And my parents had a hard time with me doing a play with the word vagina in it. And that's a whole nother story, but it was an interesting, like, I'm 18 years old, I'm making artistic choices, I'm telling stories, this is what it's gonna be. And it was a very interesting first show for me to do at IWU. And then I did Rags, gosh, I'm gonna mess up the years probably, but Rags on the main stage was my first main stage show, and I was Rachel, the old lady with saggy boobs. But it was really fun. I felt very outside of my comfort zone and playing something that's outside of myself. We're all kind of doing that in a collegiate level when you're playing roles that are older. You know, not everything is written for 20 somethings, although now a lot of it is. But no, like, you know,
that's
a lot
the
of the
side of
classics.
not being 20 something anymore. Is you're like, wait, there's a lot written for 20 somethings. I'm getting upset.
When I was 20 something, I never played 20 something. I've always played older. so whatever. But yeah, playing outside of my comfort zone with Rachel was really fun in Rags. And then Blood Brothers was also Pearly. Blood Brothers was also my sophomore year, I think, in the lab. And I was just like, you know, ensemble, lots of different characters, first time playing with accents. Well, Rags had an accent too, sort of, but like everyone playing with that Liverpudlian accent that we didn't want to sound completely false. It was a really interesting challenge. I felt like I had a really positive experience with a new brain also in the lab. I think that was my junior or senior year, junior year. And I played the homeless woman. And I loved that show. My really good friend, Brian DeCallaway, and I mean, lots of people that, you know, our classmates, that was a really just great cast that they put together. Everyone was really well suited in the cast and the roles that they played. So it felt like a really great ensemble piece. And then for me personally, I felt like I totally used Gene Kerr's effort drives in playing someone. Again, like I had not moved to New York yet, and I grew up in Kansas City. So I had not seen a lot of homeless people yet in my life. And to play something realistically that felt outside of myself, but I could still bring something to, I really approached it from a physical standpoint. And it was a really interesting way of like playing a character that I had never seen New Brain before. I wasn't copying off of Bernadette Peters or somebody else that I idolized. I felt like I was actually building a character from the ground up with my own tools and my own creativity and my own ideas, rather than stealing from somebody else. Because we all steal from our heroes. That's cool. We all do. But it's also really cool to discover your own originality within a role. And I felt like the homeless woman in A New Brain was the first time I really found that, which was really exciting. And then my senior year, I did Chicago on the main stage, and I was Velma, and I had done Chicago in summer stock the summer before. So it was like just a great year of like Fosse, Chicago, Velma, delicious villainry. And I've gone on to play lots of villains now. It's kind of a trend. But that's just such a fun show that I've chased now here in New York. I've chased it several times in my career. And that's one I'm hoping will come back post-pandemic. And, you know, Chicago will always have a life, I feel like, in the theater. But it's a great show. And it was a really great way to end my my collegiate career, as it were, at IWU. It was really fun. So then, yeah, and of course, like I have little notes because when I get nervous, I'll forget things. I also loved the yearly faculty dance concerts. I grew up dancing when I was a kid before IWU, and danced pretty seriously in high school, not competitively or anything, but like after high school, I would go to dance class for like 3 hours and then come home and do my homework and it was young, but I danced really seriously with tap and ballet and jazz before I got to Illinois Wesleyan. And then, I mean, Jean and Sherry and Daphne at the time, and our entire dance department was so great and very modern based and completely like a different flavor from what like a jazz based upbringing that I had. And it was really another well-rounded way I felt like I grew into more of a dancer in myself. during my time there. And I loved the dance concerts. My freshman year, I was on the rail for the dance concert, and I loved watching the dance concert from the rail, from the fly rail. And I'll still remember some of the pieces that appeared that year. And I was so excited to appear in the dance concerts in the forthcoming years. And I think maybe my favorite piece was Jean Kerr's Falling Down, which I don't know if she's ever reprised, but
he hasn't restaged that one.
Jean, if you're listening, it's been like a really long time since anyone did Falling Down. And that was one of the first times that I felt truly like I had to push myself to my physical limit to satisfy the choreography. And it was exhausting and really fun to do. Everyone was individuals, and it was very like woman breaking through the glass ceiling, beautiful music. I just really loved that experience a lot. So
it's funny that you would bring that up, because this is a dance concert semester. This semester we're doing Stage Door and the faculty choreographed dance concert on the main stage, and the lab show is Songs for a New World.
Oh, great.
And this is Sherry's final dance concert. So next year will be her last year with us, because she's,
oh, wow.
You know, all your faculty have been here. They're all retiring now because they've all been here.
Yeah, it's been a while.
And Jean, unfortunately, for the last few dance concerts, has not been able, as director of school, to participate in choreography. So she may be picking it back up. But this is Sherry's last one. They're calling it Simpler Times. So several of these people, y'all could raise your hands, are in the dance concert.
Yeah.
And so they can share in that. And many of them, it's their first dance concert.
Okay,
keep going. I didn't interrupt. I just wanted to put that out there.
No, I mean, that's just kind of like my nutshell of Illinois Wesleyan, giving me a really like exciting and well-rounded education. I also loved like I said, some of my women's studies classes, some of the experiences I had, just, you know, most of it is in the theater department. I wasn't Greek or anything like that. Like our theater department is so close knit, and there's a sense of community there. So I really enjoyed my time at Wesleyan. I'm still very good friends with a lot of my classmates. And yeah, it was a really great place to be. I really wish I was there in person with you guys.
Yeah. Well, anytime you're always working, which is always good.
Yeah.
Until the pandemic, you have been very fortunate to stay working. So it's been very hard for us to, I mean, that's the one great thing about the pandemic, is that you guys have had a little availability.
Yeah, for sure. No, I'm only too happy to come in whenever I can.
Yeah. Let's move on from Wesleyan then, and let's talk a little bit about early post Wesleyan. So you left Wesleyan, and things I think that they'd be interested in knowing is, you know, what was your immediate trajectory? Did you go, did you go to summer stock and then into New York, or what did you do? Was it tours? Was it, this? And because that'll open it up to all the wonderful experiences you've had. You've had so many great ones, but also, how did you first get into the union? Did things change when you became equity versus when you were non-equity? Those sorts of things that are the things that are weighing heavy on their minds and scaring them.
Absolutely. Well, y'all, I mean, it's a scary time right now, and I want everyone who's majoring in the arts to know that the arts are coming back. It is a scary time right now, and I don't think it's going to come back in the summer. I'd like to think it comes back faster, but like, we all need to be patient and still just focus on, especially at your age, and the fact that you are still, even if you're upperclassmen and approaching the marketplace and approaching like your careers, there is still time and there's still space for us all. So we can all just continue to do the work. And I mean, I don't know, my big driving MO thought that has always kept me working well up until the pandemic has kept me working pretty well and pretty consistently. As much as the business has changed, as much as my life circumstances might change, the one thing I continue to focus on is kind of a true north, which I would suggest to you all now, is just focus on the work, the joy of the work and the quality of the work. And as much as you can challenge yourself with your work, if the work is good, everything else is fine. And I'm not saying that the work is good means you're a good person and you need to personalize that and feel like a bad person if you're ever imperfect. No, if you just focus on the work, on the product, on the craft, on the joy of it, that will eventually get you everything you want. In my opinion, in my very kind of hippy dippy, attract the world you want for yourself, build the world you want for yourself. For me, if the work is good, the work comes. If my work is good, it begets work. So just try and focus on just being as true to your education and your craft as you can right now. But when I graduated in 2005, I worked for the summer at a theater that's no longer around, but it's called Seaside in Daytona. Great little place to work, really, really fun. Did Cats and Aida. yes, I was like a white girl, Nubian in Aida. I know different times. And I'm really glad we're all waking up to real casting, like, choices. Anyways, that's a whole other class we can talk about. So that was a great summer, though, that I had work and start making connections, right away with people that I still know today and people that are still professionals today. And then I moved to New York in the fall of 2005, just after that job ended. And I think I had $3,000 in my bank account, and I had a sublet set up for a little while, and I was just going to start auditioning. And I got a job, the survival job, right away, just because I do think it's important. For me, it was important to have money coming in, so I didn't have to worry so much about paying my bills and day to day. I could focus on the work rather than worry about bills. So for me, I wanted to get a job. I telemarketed for Roundabout Theater and auditioned all day, and telemarketed from like 5 to 9 at night. And that was enough to pay my bills at the time. So I had a sublet and I auditioned for a couple months, and then I got a job in Denver. And then I came home later that year and I got the Cats tour, which I went on tour for a full year in 2006, 2007. And that show, the first time I toured, the first time doing such a heavy dance musical, but real triple thready dance musical too, much like Chicago, where like you have to sing and dance at the same time. Really challenging and fun to do that show for a year internationally. And then the connection that I made professionally with that show, the director of Cats on Tour wound up giving me my equity card about 6 months later. When I came back to New York, and again, started auditioning, just subletting, and kind of living out of a suitcase until I felt like I had legs to put my feet down into an apartment, which was also that same year that I got my equity card. I think I was 24. And again, equity cards, the timing of that is very personal. Some people, especially now, I'm very interested to see in a post-pandemic marketplace, non-equity people in certain cities can work very well for a very long time. I know people my age in a marketplace like Seattle or Denver that are still non-equity and work constantly. So it's very personal. And I don't think that you need to if you're in New York or LA and really want to work, then yes, you should try and get your equity card, because auditioning and all of that just becomes much easier. But if you're in another marketplace where you're working anyways on the non-union market, it's very personal. And if anyone ever wants to talk to me about that sort of thing, you're welcome to reach out to me on social media. We can talk about that. Because I do think it's very individual for everyone. Some people get their cards when they're like 12 or something and had some opportunity and then have it forever. Some people don't have their cards and they're older than me. So it just depends. But for me, it was right to get my card with that opportunity that Richard Stafford gave me. And I did Annie Get Your Gun for 3 weeks in North Carolina. And that was when I got my equity card. Lots of fun with Larry Gatlin and Lauren Kennedy. Like the biggest age gap I've ever seen between an Annie and a Frank.
Yeah. Was this at Raleigh?
Yeah.
This is Lawrence Theater. Okay.
Lawrence Theater. Yeah, exactly. So that was really exciting and fun. And then just one thing led to another. Kind of, I don't mean to give you the false impression that the career just constantly goes up with no pauses and no, trips along the way. But for the first few years in my career, every job got better, every paycheck got better, every opportunity got better. And I did work pretty consistently after Cats and after I got my card, I started taking classes, and that's how I got my first agent, through Actors Connection. Actors Connection is a really great studio in New York that has on-camera classes, acting classes, voiceover classes, panels of agents that you can submit to and see if you can try and secure representation. So that's how I got my first agent. And then one thing led to another, and I continued to work. I did Evita in Denver 1 year. Oh God, what year? I can't even remember what year. But the year I did Evita was the year I also did Cats for the second time in Sacramento. And then I booked my Broadway debut Ragtime with alumna Brianna Parham. I think I said alumna wrong, alumni, whatever. Alum, Brianna Parham, love her so much. She's also a Kansas City girl. And I love that our careers intertwined again after she was my Mama Morton here at IWU. And then we were on Broadway debuts together, and she was Sarah's friend and was absolutely exquisite and still is. And yeah, that whole experience was like a wonderful dream come true. I could not believe it. I went to the open call for Ragtime, and I wound up being exactly what they happened to look for. And my agent, I even had an agent, he was like, everyone wants to go in for Ragtime. I'm not going to be able to, I'll try, but I don't know if I can get you an appointment. So I was like, okay, I'll go to the open call. And I booked it anyway. So that was kind of nice. And even now, open calls, again, post-pandemic, I'm interested to see how they go. One of the easy things about being in New York, if you have your equity card, you can go to open calls with some ease. You'll get seen, you're not wasting your time that day. So you know, open calls are still worth going to. I say that with the asterisks of we don't know what open calls are even going to be like post-pandemic, but I would still say they're worth going to. Gosh, let me think. So then after Ragtime, I had actually the biggest drought I've ever had in my career. And it was one of those reality checks a little bit. A lot of people in New York are like, oh, once you're in the club, like once you're on Broadway, they just call you for everything. Or once you're in the club, it starts to have a domino effect. And that may be true for some people, but I find it more often to be true that my path started to go like this. And then it kind of goes like this, because you're at this higher paycheck. You're in the Broadway community. This opportunity is so shiny and fantastic and wonderful. It's sure to maybe be a little bit different after this. And I had a really long drought after that. So it was an interesting kind of reality check, being like, you're not in any club. You still the work, focus on the work, and the work gets work in my experience. So yeah, and then a year later, I had my second Broadway credit with the Addams Family. I replaced an original cast member. Yeah, Addams Family, it was so much fun. And I was with the show for an entire year. And yeah, it was really, really a trip to be warming up on stage with Bebe Neuwirth every day. And like, the late, great Roger Rees. If you don't know who Roger Rees was, that's a lovely YouTube homework assignment to fall down a rabbit hole. He's a much bigger deal in the West End, but he was a treasure. And I can't believe I ever got to be on a stage with him. It's wild. Especially now, it's like, am I talking about my life? Like, did this actually happen? Because it's so different now with the pandemic. But yeah, Addams Family was a wonderful, wonderful Broadway opportunity that I enjoyed. And then yeah, a couple years after that, I did the first national tour of Pippin. That's another one of like the bigger credits that I've had. And it was really fun to do the first national. I got very close to the Broadway a couple times. And at first I was a little salty that I was like, I want the Broadway one. I don't want the tour one. But the tour wound up being really fantastic. And I was first cover for leading player. And as a white girl from Kansas, I assumed, I was like, I mean, leading player can be anybody, can be male, female, any color, any shape, any size. It's more like a devil and an angel than any particular race or gender. But it's typically played by African-American actors, and Tina Miller in our case, and Ben Vereen in the beginning. So I was like, oh, okay. On the first cover, I probably won't get to go on much. And I wound up going on a lot. And I wound up taking over the role for 2 months when our leading player was out on injury. And I wound up just really feeling of service to my show in a way that I probably wouldn't have been on Broadway. So it was a really, oh God, I love that show. It was so much fun to do every day.
Really interesting friends. I mean, you know, you see like Lucy Arnaz now, and all these people that also did that tour.
Yeah, Lucy Arnaz.
Tour that are older than me that now know you.
Yeah, and like Adrienne Barbeau, if you're like a fan of like vintage horror movies, Adrienne Barbeau is in all of them. And Andrea Martin, I borderline was stalking when she was with us for like a month because I love her so much. And I was reading her memoir while she was with us for 5 weeks in LA, and I was just like trying to play it cool, but she's the most wonderful lady. And yeah, it was really fun it's one of the cool things about show business. We sometimes get to meet some really wonderful people that we idolize and we get to work with, and most of the time they're pretty great.
Hey Lisa, while you're here in that moment, because you're being very, very very nice and not very braggadocious, because I'm just going to brag on you for a minute, because I mean, I've stood outside of a lot of different stage doors waiting for you. So she's the shit, and I'm just going to say it. So the thing is, particularly on that Pippin tour, because you ended up doing it, I feel like almost as much as Sasha did. So, I mean, you played that role a lot. I'd love for you to talk, because, and Marsha made a great choice in casting you in Rags. I mean, we have a lot of intersections of people on your work.
Yeah.
But the truth is, in all of these situations, you were an understudy. You were a cover. And I think it's something that sometimes we've been able to play with at Wesleyan, but because we're a small school, that's not always something we can do, because sometimes we're using all the kids we've got. So we don't have understudies and swings and covers. If you could talk a little bit about that, because it's such a specific skill set.
Yeah, for sure.
And even more so, such a specific mindset to understand. You talk about doing the work and being present for it. It can be very difficult to be the understudy cover.
Oh yeah. And with Pippin, I was really fortunate to go on so many times. I wound up counting. I kept count, and I went on exactly 100 times if you count the performance that we did in Amsterdam. it was just, long story short, I just wound up going on at least twice a week, almost every week, and then wound up taking over for 2 months. So it was really great as far as an opportunity of an understudy to get really good at it. When you're an understudy and you go on for the first time, it feels like an actor's nightmare. It feels a little bit like being thrown into the deep end of the pool. Even if you've done your homework, even if you've got notes hidden in your costume, it can be very hard to be a good actor the first time you're on. And like, I think like the second performance I have of leading player is somewhere on YouTube with Kyle Dean Massey at the Pantages. It's like the second time I went on, and it's not very good. I got so much better at it. So it was like, we're all our hardest critic too, but like, it was really interesting after such a long time of getting to practice, not only with rehearsals and my own like homework, but literally performance opportunities so often get to go on. It was really interesting to play with that. That said, usually with swinging or understudying, I find a lot of the work on Broadway for a woman like me, for the demographic like me, the triple thready demographic like me, a lot of the work on Broadway is understudying, because you can hold your own in the ensemble, but you are a badass enough singer to understudy Bebe Neuwirth or something like that, or, understudy the lead. So that can be where my strengths really can lie. And if you can be a really strong singer and dancer at the same time, that can be a really good card for you to play. It does involve a lot of work. Like, no one really tells you when you book a Broadway show that you're never home. It's great. And I want to be at the theater all the time. But like, even when you're open and your shows are Tuesday through Sunday, Monday, Tuesday during the day you have off, but then Wednesday you usually have 2 shows. And then Thursday you'll have understudy rehearsal. Friday you'll have understudy rehearsal. Saturday you have 2 shows. Sunday you have a show and then you're done. So you're really at the theater from 12 to 12 almost every day of the week, or 11 to 12 to 11, essentially, almost every day of the week. They pay you for it. It's a job worth doing, but it's the kind of thing where like you are constantly in an understudy rehearsal if you're an understudy on a Broadway show. It never really ends. Because they want you to be prepared, because if somebody goes out and something goes wrong, it's kind of on you, whether it's a safety thing, or whether it's a line dropped, or whether it's a costume change that's missed. They really want to make sure that a long running show is a well-oiled machine. So that's why understudy rehearsals never stop. As far as your own homework, I can never recommend enough to do your own homework and make notes that make sense to you. When I swung for the first and only time, thank God. I mean, I would swing again, but it's hard. I swung for Ragtime and I covered 7 different tracks, and color coding my notebook and then changing it all during tech. And then the first few times I went on, I had notes in my pocket to make sure I knew exactly where I was going so that I don't run into somebody. Our traffic patterns are crazy in that show. Like, I really had to be specific. So it's as specific as you can be in your notes that you understand, and drilling it, especially if you're in a long running show and have the opportunity to drill over time. That's the best that I can recommend for your own homework. But yeah, it's an interesting beast, swinging and understudying. And I'm not ever going to be the person who's playing the role. I'm not going to be Sasha Allen. I'm not going to be Christiane Knoll. I'm going to still be myself, and I'm going to do it the way it was directed and blocked, but you can still find room for the role within yourself. You don't have to be a cookie cutter unless you're working for Disney, and be a cookie cutter. And I say that with all the love in my heart, because I've also worked for Disney quite a bit in the last couple of years, and they're great. But yeah, and swinging and understudying is a very interesting beast, and it's hard to learn in a situation like Wesleyan has with such short shows. And I suppose you can have some internal coverage for the homework of it, but it's never really going to be throwing someone actually on. Hopefully not, barring any major illnesses or injuries or something like that.
Right. Well, okay, so I want to talk, because I got to see you and Bree that last weekend of Ragtime.
Yeah,
they canceled my tickets because y'all closed, and they decided to extend one more weekend.
Yeah,
so I'm very excited. And I sat behind Donna's mom and all her sisters, and you were Donna's understudy, who's an old friend.
Yeah,
she's also understudied for a lot of big people. She was, Patti LuPone's understudy for this last show.
For War Paint.
Yeah, for War Paint. But what was it like? Because we have quite a few people that are not dissimilar in you, that they play this wide range of characters here at Wesleyan. And we always say to them, like, when you're out of this bubble, you're going to be a young person again. However, yes, you were a young person again and playing younger roles. But Emma Goldman is a middle-aged woman. And so you're
Wednesday Addams is like 18. So
it's 18. So like, it's this thing of like, you've got to be able to go both directions and kind of be open. How do you stay open and not putting yourself in the box so that you know, it's one thing for casting directors and people behind the table to maybe box you in, but I think sometimes, a lot of times, actors box themselves in. They
Yeah.
decide they are something and they can't be a variety of things.
Yeah, well,
You've had a
that's
good
really interesting, and I think that's also a very personal thing of like how our ego and our self-esteem has a lot to do with how we see ourselves in the business. If I'm going to base my self-esteem off of how often I'm employed, or how often I get cut, or how often I get a call back, if I'm going to base my self-worth on that, that's going to be really hard in the long run, because everybody gets cut sometimes, everybody. And even when you don't get cut, your Broadway show closes sometimes. Like, you have to have a thick skin and just kind of get over that and just let it be. As far as versatility goes, I'm fortunate. I feel like with my upbringing pre-Wesleyan, during Wesleyan, and after Wesleyan, I've been able to always have an interest and a spongy kind of want for more information and more of singing and dancing and acting, and all of that has always been a big interest of mine. I've always been incredibly loud and unshy, and I love, Marcia used the word ferocity a lot, and I love my own ferocity, and I'm not afraid of my own ferocity. In an audition for Ragtime, when I'm this 5-year-old something, whatever, and I'm trying to audition for Emma Goldman, who's 39 at least in Ragtime, I didn't even let the age difference enter my mind. I went into it with ferocity and fearlessness, and that fearlessness can get you out of the box sometimes. That said, if you are a blonde Barbie doll looking leggy thing, you're going to get pigeonholed as like a showgirl or an ingenue sometimes. You know, there are certain types that we live in a visual world, and whether it's a casting director or an audience or a writer that has an idea of a stereotype of a character, sometimes those just are there because I believe we live in a visual world that just sometimes won't be ignored. To break out of that, like a character like Glinda in Wicked. Yeah, she's this bubblegum thing, but she really has a heart and a soul, and we love her by the end of it. She's not just this bappy little blonde. It's this kind of duality. If you can bring your own sense of duality and your own sense of really who you are versus who you appear to be, I think that also helps. I mean, I don't like to toot my own horn. It's the Midwestern in me, but I'm an angular looking, but really pretty, exotic looking, whatever people call you as far as like ethnically ambiguous and, you know, long, dark features that I feel like I get pigeonholed as a villain or as just like the vixen-y person. But I can also turn it around and be Emma Goldman. I can also be a filthy homeless woman in a New Brain. I feel like if I can count on who I really am versus who I appear to be and my own creativity, you can break out of that if you're given the right opportunity or if you give yourself the opportunity. My versatility has been really helpful since Wesleyan and since even younger. Being unafraid to do something that is not the pretty girl, not the Barbie doll, something different was always something that was interesting to me.
Awesome. I want to get to dancing and self-care because I also have been standing outside of a theater waiting for you to get your PT done.
Sorry.
I was with Bree waiting for you. So the thing was, but that being said, I want to get there. But before we get there, let's talk while we're here about more recent years where you did do the Disney cruise and you did play the villains.
Yeah.
And how you kind of filled in, but also some of the work that you've done with Broadway Cares and with Jerry Mitchell, stripping, and just some of the things that you've done, recently that are maybe outside of what people would expect, because they are thinking it's Broadway, but you and I both know it's not just Broadway. Like fit modeling, you've done lots of things. I mean,
definitely, like fit modeling and voiceover work, especially recently, has been really helpful. Raising money for Broadway Cares, whether it's holding the red bucket or doing the burlesque of Broadway Bears. It's not stripping, Scott. It's burlesque.
I'm so sorry.
It is if you don't know. Yeah, if you don't know, Broadway Bears has been going on for like 25 years, and it's a huge fundraiser for Broadway Cares. So much fun to do. It's the most fun, healthy, sex positive, but like just safe, happy environment I've ever been in. And actually, the second time I appeared in Broadway Bears, I tore my ACL in rehearsal. And that was a real big roadblock in my career in the last few years. That was about 6 months after Addams Family. And I already had worked for the fall to do Sweet Charity, a dance show. And long story short, I had a very long journey with my torn ACL, continuing to dance on it, continuing to work with it. I did all of Pippin with no ACL, but I had a torn ACL, but I had a high level of function that somehow I was able to continue to work at the level that I do. I definitely some dance stuff I couldn't do anymore. And as I was getting older and more leaning into more singing roles and getting called in more for singing roles, I've let the universe kind of push me in that direction. But if I had to go back and fix that ACL earlier, I totally would have, because if you ever have a really big, scary injury like that, I'm here from the other side to tell you, just bear down and get it fixed. Because I do sometimes wonder if, like, I had this momentum and then the ACL made me feel like things started to go like that. But I kept working, and I didn't want to peace out for a year for recovery, because a year recovery seems like a really long time. So I say all that because self-care as a dancer before the ACL tear, and especially after, became incredibly important for my own anxiety, for my own performance level, and what I could sustain for NH show week, whether it was a physically difficult show like Pippin, or whether if it was something a little easier on my body like The Little Mermaid or my Disney shows. I had to walk in heels. That was about all they were asking me to do physically. So, you know, the different physical demands of whatever show I was doing, I really made sure that I had signed up for PT, or I sought out PT on my own. I still do PT exercises to this day, and just really make sure that I'm not letting my body, you get tired, and to self-care yourself after a show, you don't really want to roll around on a foam roller for a half an hour, but yeah, I make myself, because it does help. So I highly recommend being able to take care of your body as much as possible, because it's our instruments. It's like not smoking if you're a singer. You know, like, I'm here to tell you that, like, you know, smoking is bad for singing. Same as, like, you know, if I'm dancing, I'm not really going to go skiing on my day off and wind up hurting my ACL even more. Or I'm just going to be smart about my restful time so that I can gas up and have the energy to do cats 8 times next week. So I do feel like that self-care is incredibly important.
Awesome. Let's talk a little bit. I just want to do something fun, because that's a little bit of, you know, that's really good. And the reason I bring you guys back is because they hear me say this, but I'm just an old guy who's not performing anymore. So what do I know? But when you guys that are in it are saying it, they hear it better. But the thing is, I want to talk a little bit about chess, because we just did it.
Oh yeah, I love that show so much.
And some people in the show, in this room, were in it, some were not. None of my principals that were are in this class, but so our Florence is not here. But okay. I want to talk a little bit about these bigger singer roles, because when I saw you, and the last time we got to spend any real time together,
oh man, it's been a while.
It's been too long, because I'm always flying in and out of New York really quickly. But when I bring Wesleyan folk with me, I'm able to kind of take a little more time with you guys. But I remember we were like, I think we were in a hotel lobby in Long Island City with Sherry. People were rolling
yeah. Oh man.
But we were tight about how you were saying you were really working, because you really wanted to, at that point, you were doing a lot of dancer stuff, but you really were wanting to move towards more and more and more singing, and you were really exploring your singing. How do you think that you've kept both of that training going? How do you stay in dance class or keep your body going as a dancer? And how are you continuing to challenge yourself as a singer? You know, and I think the acting always goes with all of that, whether you're in an acting class or not, because we're always acting, right? We're always storytelling. So that's kind of implied. But how do you think those things have happened when you can't afford consistent lessons? You're not taking lessons every week. You're not in dance class, maybe even every week, because it costs. Yeah. So how are you doing that? I mean, pre-pandemic, and then we can
pre-pandemic. I was going to say, now the pandemic, everyone's sharing their talents in remote dance classes and that sort of thing. So that's great. But you're absolutely right. Really great voice lessons and dance lessons. They do cost money. 9 times out of 10, if I took a dance class, I would take a ballet class, even though I'm not a ballerina, and I wish I had the feet for it, and I wish I had the lines for it. But it felt like eating my vegetables as a dancer. And if I was going to spend $25 on one fucking class, then I want to get as much out of it as possible. We're all adults here. I can say the F word. Yeah. Sorry for anyone who's listening on the recording with children or something, but whatever. Voice lessons are also incredibly expensive, especially if for my experience, I need to have a voice teacher who's also an accompanist, or you pay an accompanist as well to be there. Because singing with a live accompanist is incredibly useful, especially when you're going to auditions in person with a live accompanist, and can learn to really sing with a live instrument versus a karaoke track. Now, I love practicing with my YouTube karaoke tracks literally at home. I'll give myself voice lessons at home, either listening back to old voice lessons or trying a new song and troubleshooting the way I would in a voice lesson. I have learned enough in technique from my teachings in the last few years to be able to sustain that to a reasonable degree. But yeah, an actual voice lesson that costs $120 a pop is necessary. And if you can handle it, once a month, that's ideal. Since the pandemic, I have not been going once a month, and most of 2019 I was out of town. But it's definitely something you have to invest in. And then if you can't invest in it in person or, virtually, whatever deals are out there now, obviously, are probably a little bit less expensive. But I also recommend challenging yourself at home. I will listen to myself, as hellacious as it is to listen to yourself, and you hear every flaw, and you see taping myself. I'm like, you have crazy eyes, you look terrible, like your hair is out of place. I can get very self-critical, but you can really learn a lot from your own kind of voice lessons when you go back and listen to yourself. Even just orally, physically, like the sound that I'm producing now coming out of my head sounds different, let alone filtered through Zoom, but it's going to sound different to someone in the room. And it's going to sound different to myself within my own head, hearing and producing the same sound. So I'm never really it's a fascinating paradox, I think, of singers. I am never going to hear myself the way that the world hears me, whether it's in a recording or it's live in real time. It's just kind of one of those fascinating things. So to take that step back and just know, like, no one knows your voice the way you do. Listening to myself, even just farting around in my living room, singing Frozen 2 because I'm obsessed. I will go back and listen again. And how do I control that? And what would Andrew tell me to control this? And how do I, it was, and actually chess was a huge, huge step in that direction of like, Evita was a big vocal horse.
You've done some big vocal roles.
Evita was harder. But I felt like having a vocal show like that really rests on your shoulders. And Florence has such dark places that she winds up in at the end of that show. It felt like a really interesting step forward of how to maintain the vocal performance that I wanted to, the acting performance that felt authentic, and also, being able to give into what emotions might alter your singing or whatever. It was an interesting journey. But yeah, really, really honing my own, like, be hard on yourself. It's okay to be hard on yourself. Don't be abusive to yourself, but like, I want to fix every little imperfection when I go back and listen to it. And you're going to be your best teacher in that regard. Whether you have a voice teacher or not right now, I'm sure you all do in the curriculum, but always go back and listen. It's like nails on a chalkboard to hear yourself sometimes, but I'm telling you, no one can fix and hone in and perfect the way that your own ear can on your own voice.
Awesome. That's great advice. I want to talk a little bit about, well, I have so many things and I'm trying to watch the time. Okay. Let's go talk a little bit about both your cruise ship work, which is a little more recent with Disney. I just think of you, playing that Donna Murphy role.
It's so much fun.
But then also we could do a little bit about your touring, kind of that bus and truck kind of, early touring versus big equity touring where we're flying from city to city,
right?
Great hotels, but just to give them a picture of that, because I think sometimes I want y'all here in auditions class, or I want people that are out there I want them to give them the aspirational thing, but I also want to shatter the image that it's all glamorous, because
it's definitely not
glamorous.
The glamorous life, absolutely not. No, I mean, there is glamour to it. Don't get me wrong. I mean, like opening nights and Tony performances and all of that is wonderful and glamorous and YouTube worthy. But like, there's also, the 10-month drought that you have after ragtime, and you really wonder what the hell happened. It can be hard. It can be really hard. Or if an injury happens, or if I miss a lot of family things. I miss anniversaries and parties and things because I'm in Brazil being a cat, and it's not easy to come back. Or I can't get it in my contract to come back. So that's hard. And the instability of what we do, whether you're good at it and successful seeming or not, it is less stable than the mortgage company I'm working for right now to fill the gap. The instability of just the nature of being an artist and a creative person is going to be just less stable by nature. But there are ways to sustain your own stability. There are ways to sustain your own finances, your own sanity, all of that. Okay, so, but to tell you the truth, the Disney job is total cake. So if you want me to shatter illusions, I shouldn't start with Faith, Trust, and Pixie Dust.
No, but that's the aspirational part of it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, to have earned something, it's nice. Like, Broadway doesn't automatically call once you're in the club, like I mentioned before. But sometimes you do get some doors that open just because you have a Broadway credit. And this Disney contract was one of them. Not just because I have a Broadway credit. I'm also talented and I earned it. But you have to have a Broadway credit for this contract to be offered to you because you're a Broadway guest artist for Disney. You're on this shorter, very cushy, fantastic Broadway minimum paycheck job that it's basically paid vacation. And I played the two Disney villains and have a solo show. It's really, really fun. It's a great way to know stability financially. I could plan for certain quarters of the year that I would know I'd go to work for Disney for a couple months. Sailing like the ocean was never something I thought I liked, but it was really fun. I do miss cruising. I totally appreciate cruising. I got to go all the way through the Baltic and through the British Isles with Disney and do some international travel that was just exquisite. It was fantastic. So Disney was awesome. But that's a very lucky job that I got and that I have a Broadway credit for and that I qualified for. And I happen to be perfect for both of the roles of Donna Murphy's role of Mother Gothel in Tangled. And the Disney's Cinderella has like a new spin on Cinderella they do called Twice Charmed, where I play the evil stepmother. So really, really fun to play two classic Disney villains. So touring, on the other prong of your question, the early days of touring with what's called bus and truck, meaning like you are on a bus and your set is on a truck. And there are, cities that you go to. We were on a pretty decent tour for the Cats non-union tour. We opened in like Denver. And no, we opened in like Massachusetts, but then we went to Denver and then we went to Brazil for like a month and we went to Chile for 2 weeks. And it was my first time out of the country. It was really, really fun. And then after Brazil and these long sit downs for the next like 9 months of the tour, it was split weeks or one-nighters, which means that like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, we're in Ohio. And then Thursday, Friday, Saturday, we're in Poughkeepsie or something, and you have to drive in between. I was young and I was doing Cats 8 times a week and I was sitting on a bus on my days off. So that was hard. And I think it would have been harder on my body now just because age is a thing. Our joints and our bones get older and it's harder to sustain that kind of dance show in those kind of conditions as you get older. But it was still fun. Like, I mean, I remember sleeping on the floor of the bus because we'd have to have bus call at like sometimes 5 in the morning. Then I just fall back asleep. Or I remember once not sleeping on the bus and everybody else was, and we were in Northern California and it was like Return of the Jedi was like the giant forest that we were going through. It was like this magical moment. So, it's not glamorous, but it can still have, Easter eggs that I still think of to this day. Pippin was a little bit of a longer, we never had a split week, thank God. Never had a split week or a one-nighter with Pippin. I don't think they could have unloaded the set that fast, to be honest with you. But we did have a little bit more of, the first national tour is essentially the same as a Broadway show as far as the billing is concerned, and usually it's the same, the Broadway show is ideally still running. And in our case, Pippin was still running when we launched. And it was definitely a little bit more glamorous for the first half of the tour. It was like month-long sit downs, and then it started to dwindle like 3 weeks, 2 weeks, and then everything else was 1 week sit downs for the rest of the tour. It was still really, really fun. But sometimes on those days off, so Tuesday through Sunday, I'm working, I'm doing Pippin, and then we're not going to travel on a Sunday night. We just don't. So travel on Monday morning. Show up to the hotel on Monday night, usually Monday evening, afternoon, whatever times, usually like 4 or 5 at night. And then Tuesday, you're back at work at the theater. Your day off was spent traveling. So even on a first national, it can be hard. And again, that's where self-care comes in. That's where you go to Trader Joe's in your new city and sit at home and watch TV and recharge. That's for me, oftentimes on a day off, where I'm about to go into a school night, when I'm about to go into a show where I had the next day. Self-care is really important. But yeah, there's definitely perks to like I said, with the non-union market. Non-union touring will continue to be a thing. I think it has its place. There's a whole argument of like what kind of shows should be going non-union straight out and the price tag that is put on shows. That's a whole other conversation we can have. But I do think that there is a lot of really good opportunity out there for non-union work, especially in the touring market. And so when that continues, I suggest it. I mean, I also suggest getting your equity card if you're coming to New York and you want an ease of auditioning. But Those non-union tours, as split weeky and one-nightery though they may be, they are still worth doing and building your career and starting. It's a great starting point.
Well, often the directors and the choreographers are the same. I mean,
exactly.
Our union, the director choreographer union does not differentiate between the unions of the performers.
No, and everyone was non-union at some point.
Yeah,
like, it's not like there's this idea of like non-union means you're less than. Non-union means that you're like an amateur and the rest of us are professionals. That's not necessarily true. And I think that's just where people's ego and fears start to override reason and what's real.
So before we move into student questions, and we are going to open it up to you guys because I know you all are raring to go, I want to talk a little bit about how you deal with anxiety, in the room. You know, there's nothing like the excitement of the first day of school, you know, on these shows. But when you're walking in and you're 24 and there's all these people that you've heard on recordings and you know them from the Broadway shows when you were in high school. I mean, I think about Ragtime, you know, it wasn't like Ron and those are people that y'all had on CD when you were.
I was obsessed, like just so obsessed.
So the thing is, how do you deal with that anxiety? How did you get past that? And what was your favorite survival job? And then I'll open it up.
Okay. I mean, anxiety of working with people like, you know, like Christiane or Ron or, you know, Nathan Lane or any of these people that are big, big names, they didn't really make me nervous so much. I'm sure if anyone has met a famous person or has spent any time with anyone who's a name, they're just people like us. They're really just people. So that never really made me nervous so much. Auditioning makes me wildly nervous. I am much more comfortable on a stage in front of thousands of people by myself versus auditioning at Pearl Studios. I think the way that I can see my audience more in an audition, it gets to me sometimes, it gets to my nerves. The way I self-judge and if I start to think of them judging me, I'm not doing the work anymore. And the best audition advice I think I can give is do what you practiced. Do what you practice. Practice first, don't wing it. Do not wing it. Even if it's a song that you've sung a million times in your book, don't wing it. Have specificity with what you're doing. Practice it. And then when you're in the room and you see Jerry Mitchell writing and being like, and doing all that stuff that happens in auditions, don't get nervous. Don't think, oh, I have to impress him now and I got to turn on the gas. Do what you practiced, because what you practiced is good enough. You are good enough. Exactly what you did before you walked in the room was good enough. And if you can just play that hand and play it cleanly, it's better than winging it. It's better than flying off at the mouth a little bit or getting what Jean called, and I still use this, red light fever, where you get in the moment and you think, oh my God, I have to do more. You do not have to do more. You are enough. Exactly what you practiced. But yeah, auditioning makes me wildly nervous. Doing what I practiced is a very calming mechanism for me. Literally breathe where I breathe, place where I place, the thought process, the objective, all of it, just keep on that roadmap. If I start looking behind the table or wondering what they're writing about me, then I'm not doing the work anymore. So really doing what I practice is really a big part of me handling my anxiety. Also, hydrating and not being a dum-dum the night before. I mean, I'm a grown-up. I've gone out with friends and been like, sure, we'll have one more drink. It'll be fun. I've got an audition tomorrow. It's no big deal. And then I feel like crap and I don't do as well at the audition. It's not worth it. So like, take care of yourself, hydrate, get good sleep, wake up in the morning and feel fabulous before you go there. Don't run late and work yourself up into a frenzy just because the subways suck. Always try and be early, especially for the girls. It sucks. I have to do everything. I have to do so much to look great for 2 minutes and then go on with the rest of my day. It's such a pain in the ass, but you've got to do it, especially now, especially with, I feel like the way that the image-based part of Broadway, especially working at a high level, auditioning with people that have 8 or 10 Broadway credits versus 2 or 3. You are playing with the big kids. You are running with the bulls and they are gorgeous. So be as gorgeous as you feel that you can be. I hate to be like, you know, image-based, but we are in an image-based business. And if I show up with just a strong lip and my hair in a ponytail versus Paloma Garcia Lee is up next to me with like false lashes and gorgeous everything, they're not going to look at me. So it's an image-based thing. It's not me trying to be a Barbie doll or someone I'm not. It's about playing your best hand. So yeah, be early, feel fabulous, look fabulous, plan something nice for yourself after the audition, because you've already got this beat on. And I will plan to go visit a friend that lives in the neighborhood, or go get a cupcake at that place around the corner, or like do something for myself that I can look forward to after the audition. I just think that's good self-care mentally.
Awesome. Okay, I'm gonna open it up to everybody.
Yeah.
Gallery view so I can see everybody. Okay. So, oh, Kieran's hand is already up. Look at that. He looks kind of like Jesus. So,
Hi,
Kieran,
Kieran.
Kieran's a senior BFA actor. What do you want to ask Lisa?
Hi, Lisa.
Hi.
I wanted to ask you about your voiceover career and indulging, if you will. But I wanted to specifically ask, because obviously you've had a very successful career on Broadway, and then with live theater. So I wanted to know how you started those negotiations, either with agents or with companies about voiceover work, and how you began to diversify your portfolio that way.
I mean, I've always been told by colleagues that do voiceover, like Robert Petkoff or John Rubinstein, like you have a great voice for this. Why aren't you doing this? I've just heard that so many times. So in the last couple, 3 years or so, I've started taking classes with voiceover. Just honestly, it sounds kind of silly. It's not that hard of a technique, but there is a slightly different technique to voiceover. They want you to sound like nothing. They want you to sound like nothing, as if you are I read the copy if I can for the very first time, unless there's a word I can't pronounce and I have to look it up or something, like medical voiceovers or some video games with like stuff. If I can help it, I'm going to give it as cold and dry of a read as possible, because that's generally what they want. But I took a couple of voiceover technique classes through Actors Connection again, and One-on-One, another studio in New York that's worth looking into. And I did some voiceover technique and agent panel classes. I still don't have a voiceover agent. I got a commercial agent and a voiceover agent twice, and then I went out of town and I hadn't booked anything yet, and so they dropped me, which happens. When you work out of town a lot, sometimes those new relationships don't have enough time to flower. So that's okay. But then again, kind of like the non-union actor world, the non-union voiceover world, I am not SAG. I have one waiver left and I don't want to become SAG unless I really start working in more Screen Actors Guild contracts, because it's very expensive. But anyways, there's a lot of non-union voiceover work out there, a lot, whether it's instructionals, whether it's video games, whether it's, I did one for the Orange County Credit Union that's been over and over again. It's just one of those things that is another non-union marketplace that I think is worth tapping, especially at the beginning of your voiceover journey. For me, voiceover has kind of stalled a little bit because I don't have as much time to do submissions, but I've been self-submitting on a website called voices.com. They've also recently changed their fees and their platform in a way that I'm kind of rethinking, and I'm going to let my subscription end and maybe go into Fiverr or another database that's like that. But basically, I just throw gum at the wall. I'll do 30 or 40 voiceover submissions. They give you copy. They tell you exactly what they want, and I'll self-record. It's worth investing in a decent USB microphone and investing in some sort of space that can be sound muffling. In New York, there's no such thing as soundproof. I'll have to like stop for sirens and stuff. But I do record in the back of my apartment, where with like a desk set up with like eggshell stuff. You can YouTube like, self-made studio spaces or muffling spaces, because that echoing noise, even that like we're experiencing here in the room, on a voiceover, it's not, next time you listen to a podcast, start listening for like background noises or like S sounds or clicking. You'll start to hear it once you start to listen for it. But so through practice and through auditioning a lot through voices.com, I got pretty good at basic sound editing. Again, YouTube tutorials, self-taught with that. It was a lot of self-taught time. When I fixed my ACL is when I taught myself how to sound mix, because I was sitting doing nothing. So I did a lot of YouTube self-teaching of an easy sound mix. I use Audacity, and I have the Blue Yeti mic. It's a decent starter. Yeah, you have a Blue Yeti mic too. I see Angie nodding. But yeah, it's definitely something that's worth investing your time in. I've been able to, especially at the beginning of the pandemic, I was able to pay my bills with voiceover. So it's definitely worth expanding and utilizing your time with. That's a great question.
Thank you.
Oh, Scott, you're muted.
I'm muted. Oh my God, someone has to do it at every single Zoom. Someone's got to be muted. Okay, Julie, you had your hand up. It's because again, I have to do this so I can see in my bifocal to see who I'm looking at. Okay.
Oh, good.
Julie is a junior BFA actor.
Hi, thank you so much for speaking with us and taking the time out of your day to do this.
Oh, I'm having a great time.
My question was, when you're doing really long tours like that, how do you keep it fresh and keep
Mm-hmm.
yourself invested in the show when you're doing it every night?
That's a good question. I mean, I hate to sound corny, but I really love musicals. I do love what I do. And like a show like, well, a show like Addams Family isn't maybe one of my favorite that's ever been written, like Ragtime or like Pippin or something, but I still loved that show. I loved the creativity of it. I loved my cast as we continued to evolve with different principles, and the whole show started to shape differently when Roger replaced Nathan and when Brooke Shields replaced Phoebe. So like, rolling with the show that is going to be set and you are in your track, but it is a living, breathing thing, and it is allowed to a certain degree to take shape over a long run. So that there is a degree of flexibility within the monotony, as it were, if that makes sense. And also, I just feel like this is something that is just a pet peeve of mine within the industry. And if I ever see it on stage, it just drives me insane. And I know we're humans, we're not robots. We are subject to fatigue and colds and bad days, and we are allowed to have them. But I really feel you have to take care of yourself physically and mentally. And if you need to take a mental health day from work, that is just as important as a sick day. But if you're on stage and lazy, if you're on stage and I can see you not giving it out of your pores, you can kind of tell when someone's tired on a Sunday night versus fresh as a daisy on a Tuesday night. I see it often, and it really bothers me because there are so many of us who want what that person has and is not giving it 100. This is why you take care of yourself on a Monday night, so that you can give 110%. To not give it is not only a slap in the face to everyone else in the industry who wanted your job, but it's also a slap in the face to Stephen Schwartz or Lynn Ahrens and Stephen Flaherty or whoever wrote and directed and built your piece and got Tony nominees for it. And the people who are sitting in the seats, they didn't pay to see me tired on a Sunday. They paid to see me fresh as a daisy on a Tuesday, whatever day they paid for. So I feel like it's a responsibility to the show and to the audience and to yourself and to your community to fucking give it. Because if you can't, if you do not have the capacity physically or vocally, then take a sick day. But like, I just feel like that's one of the things that I really look out for, and that helps me sustain my energy level, knowing that I have a responsibility to.
Okay, who's next? Mike Justice up in the left. Mike is a junior music theater major.
Hi.
Oh, sorry. Thank you so much for coming today. I was going to ask, so when it came to like touring, was that just kind of something you had just kind of found yourself at open call for, or was it like you specifically had to start to head for that path to get there?
I mean, I definitely recommend auditioning for everything you can, especially when you first hit New York. It's an audition. It's an opportunity to take a free dance class. It's an opportunity to hone your skills. It's an opportunity to sing something from your book. Even if you're auditioning for something that is cast and it's like a required call, that casting director is still going to go, oh, she killed that. I'm going to call her for something next week. So it's always worth going to. You're auditioning for like 10 things every time you go to one audition, if you're going to a casting director that has multiple projects. So audition as much as you can. That said, don't spin your wheels. I'm not going to go and audition for Hamilton because there's not a role for me in Hamilton. So I'm not going to go outside of what is realistic and spin my wheels for no reason. But I am going to be proactive about putting myself out there as much as possible. As far as choosing to tour or not, it really was more of an aspect of like what opportunity was served to me that was best at the time. I always wanted to tour, and the Cats tour wound up being a really great, big, long job to jump off the first like year or so that I lived in New York. I made lifelong connections and friends. I got the connection that got my equity card from there. I wound up doing Cats like 4 other times because I was a Demeter and people just know that and they call you. So like, it wound up being this really, really great opportunity. With Pippin, I mean, I was so like, I had such a Jones for Pippin, like especially the revival. I wanted it so bad. And I got down to 2 of us twice for the Broadway show. And the other girl got it both times. And I know her, I know both of them. And so it's fine. It's like, it's good that it went to a good person, but that one chapped my lips a bit when I didn't get Pippin twice. So when they were mounting the tour, versus like 1 vacation swing or 1 swing in the Broadway original was what they were looking for when I auditioned. Now they're building an entire company from the ground up. So my odds are better. My numbers odds are better of getting a track. And I knew the music director. I knew how close I was, and I felt like I just was waiting for that opportunity, whether it was Broadway or the tour. For some reason, I really just felt like this is happening for me somehow. If I just need to keep showing up. And like I said, I was a little bit like, it's not Broadway at the beginning, but it truly, especially because I got to go on for LP so often and got to have such an incredible journey with that show. It was what was right at the time that I didn't see at the time. You know, like 2020 is hindsight, and like hindsight is 2020, bleh, whatever. But you know, like at the time I was a little crusty about not getting Broadway, but then that tour was waiting for me, and that was the opportunity that was actually better for me.
Well, to really raise your street cred, I mean, you got a ton of press. It was kind of like Sarah Buckle in Beautiful. She got
she was so
more
great.
press from the tour than she did when she did it on Broadway, because she only did it on Broadway for a very short time.
Yeah.
Justine has her hand up. She is a junior BFA music theater.
Hi.
Hi. Okay, I don't know how to word this question, so it might sound crazy, but I'm gonna try anyways.
Okay.
So, how do you know what to audition for? Like, say for example, you don't see yourself in a certain show, but other people could. So how do you know what you should, I don't know what I'm saying. How do you know what you need to, or what you should do? Does that make sense?
You got it.
Yeah.
She got it. I see the twinkle in her eye. She got it.
I understand completely. For one, like I said before, it is worth just putting yourself out there, even if you have doubts. Like I remember auditioning for the Addams Family when it was still workshopping, and I was like, fuck the Addams Family, I'm never doing this show, because it just was crazy. The dancing was like insane, and it was something that I'm a good dancer, but I'm not the dancer you're looking for. And then I wound up taking over on the Broadway. So it's like, well, you never know. Don't get in your own way with a preconceived notion. 1. 2, right now is the most like, well, not right now because everything's shuttered, but we have opened our eyes in a post-Trump world, in a post-Hamilton world. We have opened our eyes to what casting can be, and you don't have to just be the pretty blonde Barbie doll to get a job anymore. You don't have to just be the shiny Ken doll to get a job anymore. There are sizes, shapes, and colors and gender types of all of us out there, and there has never been a more exciting time to diversify the whole casting pool, let alone what you think of your own self as. There is only the limit that you really want to put on yourself. Now, that said, I have auditioned for stuff, or I've gotten appointments for stuff. I remember, should I say the show? Love Never Dies, the sequel to Phantom, toured for a while. I know a couple people that did that job, and it was a great job, and I'm not knocking the show. But I remember looking at the audition, looking at the music, YouTubing the show, doing my research, and just being like, I don't want to do this. And it's a good job. It's a good paycheck. It's equity weeks for those insurance weeks. I have no interest in even looking at this music. I have no interest in even learning this music. I hated it, if I'm being honest. So I called my agent and I was like, listen, I never do this because I love to throw shit at the wall and I want to see what comes back. But I do not think that this is a good fit for me. And they were like, okay, we respect that. We'll pull you. No big deal. So don't pigeonhole yourself and embrace all ideas of what you think you can be, whether it's your stereotype villain bad girl like I get stereotyped in, or whether it's Emma Goldman and Rachel and Rags, old lady character type of shit. If you have both within you, don't pigeonhole yourself. But also let yourself say no if it really feels like this is absolutely a waste of my time and not a fit.
I think we're so excited to see what the Renaissance will be like, right?
Oh man, it's crazy.
Flag and we get onto the Renaissance. That's always a fertile time. And I am fascinated by what this push towards social justice and diversification and diversity, equity, and inclusion, how that will change things even more so. It's changed a lot, even in the last 10 years, but how much more it will even change. So I'm excited about it.
And it's a really interesting thing that's going to take time as well, because like, you know, let alone with the pandemic, having the economic time that it's going to take for international travelers to come back and fill Broadway houses. But like, it takes time for new works to be developed and new works to be produced and all that. But, you know, we have time, and you're absolutely right with the Renaissance period that is going to come after the plague. Absolutely. That's how history works.
Yeah. Okay. Alexis Jones has her hand up. She is a junior BFA music theater major.
Hi.
Hi. So my question is you talked a little bit about workshopping, and then on your resume it said that you workshopped in New York. Can you tell me a little bit about that process? We're
Yeah.
workshopping here, but I want to hear how it is in New York.
I mean, a workshop is a literal contract sometimes, and there's different workshops. There's like a 29-hour reading that is one contract, and then there's like a Broadway production contract workshop, and then there's a bunch of stuff in between. And it's usually when a piece is in development. Like I did the Anastasia 29-hour reading, the very first time anyone ever read Anastasia, and Angela Lansbury was in the room, and it was so cool. But like, you know, it was very early in the development of that show. And then they wound up having all the ladies in that show on fucking point. So I was no longer a fit for that show, because as strong of a dancer as I am not a swan. But it was still an amazing opportunity to be in the room and begin the development of something that wound up having a healthy, beautiful run on Broadway. There are also workshops that are weird as hell and never see the light of day, because it's creativity working the kinks out. It's creativity deciding what it wants to be. It's producers deciding what they want to bank and bankroll and book. So, you know, there's a lot of really great workshops and readings that are in development, but that don't see the light of day. But it's really fun to work on. It's really fun to be a part of that early part of the creative process. Good question.
Yeah. Okay. So Angie Cornwell, who's our TA, she's already had auditions class, so she's TAing for me. She's a senior BFA music theater, and she's the one who does a lot of our social media. So she's always putting y'all's faces out there. So
cool. Oh, I'm so bad at social media. I'm terrible.
Hi. Thank you for being here. I feel like everyone's like, thank you for being here.
No, I'm really excited to be here. You guys are so sweet.
I want to jump back, like right before Alexis's question, we were talking, you know, pandemic times. I mean, I know that you're going through this yourself right now, but do you have advice to, you know, maybe people who are graduating into a time where there really is not a lot of theater, as far as like what you think a good direction for a young artist who may not be like booked right out of school could do to keep on pursuing a career and not, you know, get stuck?
That is a good question. Sorry, my computer is buzzing. We all, God, it's crazy this year, what has been slammed in our faces and what it's teaching us. And I think maybe the greater good that might come out of this for all of us, at least I'm trying to think of it this way, is that I feel like the pandemic has thrust everyone into the present moment, especially like last spring in New York. It was like, what food do I have in my house today? What workout can I do today? Who can I Zoom and talk to today? Is there wine in my house today? You know, like I had to just really look at what was in front of me right now. And I do think that while you're still in school, just take advantage of the fact that you are in a safe space. You are not vying for a job just yet. And you are in a really valuable place to be a sponge and soak up as much as you can. Truly, like, and I know how exhausting college can be, and I know you're strung in a lot of different directions with a lot of different class demands, but I'm telling you, you are all brilliant, creative geniuses. You are at that school for a reason, and you can handle the load. It's something you're going to miss when it's gone. This kind of scholastic environment, you're going to miss it. And the hustle is real and the hustle is fun, but you're in a safe space right now to be a sponge. So I highly recommend that while you're there. Once you graduate and come into the marketplace, I recommend being open-minded about how to make money between now and Broadway as we know it. Because if I'm being honest, I think it's going to be a while. Like Brian DeCallaway, one of my best friends from IWU, he is the assistant company manager for Frozen on tour. And he was calling me and talking to me about this when this first began and to his prediction. And I want him to be wrong, but I think he's right. He doesn't think Frozen on tour is coming back until 2022 probably, because touring it has its own set of exposure to it, and let alone theater and large gatherings in itself. And he told me this back in March, and I was like, oh, fuck that, he can't be right. But he very well might be, and we all need to prepare for that financially. I've always been smart financially, but bills happen, and there's got to be a way to pay them. I say this because I believe actors and creative people sometimes pigeonhole themselves into going, well, all I can do is theater. All I can do is sing and dance. I don't have any other skills. And that is completely wrong. That is completely false. The skills that you are learning now are incredibly useful in the Muggle world. I'm working for a mortgage company right now where they are hiring actors a lot. And if anyone moves to New York and we're still hiring this fall, hit me up. But it is a safety net that I'm incredibly grateful for. And I am finding my skills of improvisation, flying on my feet, being totally comfortable talking to strangers. You have no idea how many people struggle with that. The skills that you all already possess and that you're developing in your arts education are transferable to the Muggle world, I promise you. And there are jobs that are available somewhat. I mean, I feel very fortunate that I've been able to pivot to a survival job that's sustainable. Not everyone is able to do that right now, and I recognize that. So I'm not just saying like, go pull up your bootstraps and find a job. It's not gonna be that easy. But I'm telling you to make sure that you keep yourself and your mind open to what skills you already possess. It's not like you have to go back and start majoring in business now to get a job of any kind to pay your bills while we wait for theater to fully reignite. Does that make sense?
Lisa, we're gonna have to leave it at that. Can you believe we're at time? I can't believe we're at time. These things go by so quickly because you guys have so many wonderful things to say. Tell us now how you'd like the students, if they want to reach out to you, should they go through your website and just, that way your website will get more traffic. They can
go through my website and send me a message and I'll be able to email back and forth with you directly there. If you can also follow me on social media, I have Instagram and Facebook, although I kind of suck at it. I feel like that's a whole, if anyone wants to teach me more about social media, I would love it more. Yeah, Angie, hit me up. But and it is an important part of what we do now that you should be good at, that you should be honing those skills and you really have to do whether you like it or not. So, but I do have them. So hit me up any way you're comfortable. And I really appreciate getting to Zoom in with you guys.
Lisa, thank you so much. It's always great to see you. I hope to see you soon. I hope to see you on stage soon.
Oh, I hope so too. All of you, stay safe, stay healthy, enjoy college.
Well, we love our alums. Okay, everybody, you will get your next audition on Thursday. I will see you. Have a wonderful Tuesday. Bye, everybody.
Bye, y'all.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you so much. Nice to meet you. Likewise. Thanks again, Scott. This was really fun.
Thank you. Really, it means so much to us to have you guys back.
I wish I could be there in person, but yeah, anytime you want me to Zoom in and have a question and answer, or if I anything I can do, I'm always happy to help.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, great. You got a hold of Kelly about removing.
Oh yeah, we're all good. No worries at all.
Awesome. Thank you. Take care.
Take care, Scott. Bye.